Another, I guess, topic for older home is asbestos. We deal with that a lot, especially when I'm doing inspections in Norfolk and in Portsmouth.
Sure.
Right? And a lot of people hear that term, asbestos, and they just like,
Freaks out.
Right?
Yeah.
But,
Can you give me some examples of where would you find that material?
Mostly today, probably still left on some of the older homes on the siding.
Okay.
Right? And it's unmistakable, right? Siding, insulation in the attic. Probably most likely, if they're still using a boiler system, on the piping, the asbestos insulation they wrap to keep the pipes basically to not release, and lose energy. It's sometimes in a crawl space, sometimes in the attic, right? And asbestos is one of those things where, as is, if it still exists, it's still in use, like insulation around the pipe, it's okay as long as it's been encapsulated, right? And the siding around the house.
The key word is what? Friable? Is that what the?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
could you explain what that means for people?
Well, let's see.
Take a drink there.
I'll join you.
I like to think of it this way. So, asbestos. I just did a training on asbestos in regards to this. Asbestos in manufacturing, it's pretty much in a lot of different products back in the day. It's in flooring, it's in insulation,
roofing,
siding. Roofing and siding. But is it being dispersed, right? Currently, if it's in place, it's intact, it's okay.
So
right?
friable,
Go ahead.
From what I understand, just means that, let's say that the surface is broken and they're getting fibers into the air, right? And it's that inhalation of those fibers that can cause some serious damage or what you need to be nervous. And if you're going to go and what's called abatement or abate those, which just basically means remove, you have to be licensed, and they come in with big old suits and masks and that type of thing.
Basically tape everything off, right? And then
and it can be kind of expensive.
It can be very expensive.
Yeah.
So as is, if you're buying an older home that has some of these asbestos systems, it's okay. Let's say for siding, you can put vinyl siding over top of that,
right?
As long as you do not remove it. It's okay to paint over it. You can do insulation. You can put new insulation on top of that.
It's once those fibers get into the air is when it becomes an issue.
Yes.
It's interesting because that's very similar to lead paint, which is I think another issue with older homes. Because one of the things we have in our contracts is this idea of hey, if the house is built before 1978. It likely has lead paint in it.
Sure.
And you can opt to get a lead paint test. This because I see this in the people all the time. Like, well, why would I waive to get a lead paint testing done? I'm like, well, I'm not saying don't do it. You can do it, right? Because this is kind of like what risk, and what it's like the doctor saying, hey, check for lumps, or make sure that you do these things because they don't want to be liable for you not doing your research or doing the check. So lead paint is kind of one of those issues. It's like, but if it's built before, like especially even the house that we're in now, it's 1912. My friend, it has lead paint in it, right? The question is it exposed? Is it something that's easily like touchable and accessible? Because kids are kids, little tyrants that do dumb stuff, like lick walls and eat paint chips and stupid stuff like that. And so you just want to be careful that if it is something that is lead paint, well, what's the number one way to address it, or that you see?
Paint over it.
Right? Because if you want to go and remove it,
that gets very expensive.
Well, I mean,
right?
imagine every nook and cranny.
Exactly.
Like every trim piece you'd have to go through and scrape out and sand. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
And so
when it comes to lead paint, if you're going to be remediating it, you get EPA involved. And when the EPA is involved, if you don't do it, the company's not doing it correctly.
Sure.
That's a huge fine for the company itself. Not only that, but then, there's...
Yeah, I know 2 or 3 painters that I've worked with in the past that are like, yeah, we don't deal with it. Because I was like, hey, we're looking at, could you do some testing? They're like, I'll test it. That's easy. I just go in there, put a little strip on there, and it'll tell me if it lead. But if you're asking me to abate it or take it, like, we don't do that.
Oh, yeah.
It's just too labor intensive.
I thought about it. I looked into it a couple of years back for my contracting business.
Okay.
the liability for as a contractor. And that's why it's not many painters. And I remember one time you were trying to find somebody on a project that you were doing. You were able to find someone, but not many painters want to deal with that because the hammer that may be put down on you if you do not do it correctly and take the necessary steps is big.
Anything else with old homes you think are worth kind of giving some advice on?
I think for older homes would basically be, besides what we talked about, is HVAC systems. I know most older homes had boilers, and if the boilers are in use, make sure that the systems get serviced just like an HVAC system, just like an air conditioning system. If it's no longer being used because that system still exists in the house, but it's no longer being used, just make sure that it's been properly, the gas supply is capped off. I ran into that situation a couple of weeks ago where did the inspection. I called out the fact that this boiler is no longer in use, and they needed to cap off that that gas supply. They didn't choose to ask for it. Buyer decided to turn on the gas once he moved in. Virginia Gas says, you got to get that taken care of, otherwise we're not going to turn it on. And it cost him, I think, almost $800.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of systems to really look into, but yeah.